用一句话证明你是中国人。
如果心眼有颜色，那一定是周国红。
So here's the deal. China just instituted Xi Jinping Thought into the curriculum of elementary or primary school kids in China. And I know you probably think, okay, yeah, it's China, it's a communist country, super authoritarian, of course. But this is kind of unprecedented. We have not seen this type of behavior since Chairman Mao. Now, school in China is completely different than what you might be used to back in your own country. I mean, China is the only place in the world where kindergartners have to go through security so that they don't get stabbed. Seriously, there's a massive, huge problem with kindergartners getting stabbed by adult males. I don't know why this happens. It's absolutely insane. But that's another story for another time. You might hear about this Xi Jinping character quite a lot. He gets compared to Winnie the Pooh, and they outlaw comparing him to Winnie the Pooh in China. He's the most powerful man in the entire world. He's the leader of China, and he's not exactly what we thought he was gonna be. I'll be honest with you, before he came into power, a lot of people were even excited because they thought that he would bring about more liberalization and change to China. But in fact, he didn't do that. He brought about something called Xi Jinping Thought. And Xi Jinping Thought is all of his little ideas, the things that he hopes for China, and really is in fact a playbook for how to make China more closed down and more authoritarian.
请用一句话证明你是中国人。
此生不愧入华夏，来世还做中国人。
So you hear about this Xi Jinping Thought campaign a lot. I mean, I heard it when I was in China all the time. But if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like Chairman Mao's little red book. You see, China had 5 communist leaders. Chairman Mao, Mao Zedong, being the first and most definitely the worst. This guy is responsible for tens of millions of deaths. We're not talking about old times. We're not talking about famines from the Black Plague era. We're talking about modern times, 1949 to 1976. He makes other genocidal dictators blush at his body count. More than Hitler, more than Stalin. From famine caused by his idea that killing all of the sparrows would increase grain harvest, to him forcing people to export that grain to the Soviet Union while they starved. Also, he could brag about production quotas to the big boys in Moscow. Yeah, this dude was bad. Anyway, he used to make people carry around this little red book with quotes from himself. Doesn't really get more narcissistic than that, does it? In fact, I have one of these little red books. I bought one when I was in China, and then I was gifted an English translated version from a family member. I guess they thought that I would really enjoy studying it in my spare time. Anyway, some of Chairman Mao's best quotes include, "When there is not enough to eat, people starve to death. It is better to let half of the people die so that the other half can eat their fill." Anyway, after tens of millions of people died directly from Mao's policies, the Communist Party of China decided to take a less extreme approach. Maybe not kill tens of millions of people. Deng Xiaoping, the leader after Mao Zedong, he gave them little tastes of capitalism before going into a full-on tango, dancing with the evils of Western trade and free markets. Well, the thing is, before all of this free market trade, China was a proper third world country, starving to death where people could barely make ends meet, eating grass and bark, and trading each other's children so that they didn't starve to death. So capitalism became a good thing, at least in the lay people's minds of China. Despite horrible human rights records, with freedom of religion and speech and things like this, it really did seem like China was liberalizing. I mean, what's the next step after full-on capitalism is you give people more freedom. Well, at least that's how a lot of countries worked. I should know, I was there at the time. I lived under the leadership of Hu Jintao, who for all intents and purposes took a fairly meek approach to China's role in the world. Yes, he did promote censorship of the internet, but people in China could more or less do what they want as long as it wasn't protesting against the government. Even then, people still had a hell of a lot more freedom to express themselves than they do now. All of that changed when Emperor Xi took the helm.
请用一句话证明你是中国人。
我们生在红旗下，长在春风里。
According to Xi Jinping, It was time for China to go full-on authoritarian again. He cracked down on literally every freedom of expression. If you're a Muslim minority, time for re-education. Are you Christian? Well, your church might get bulldozed. Are you gay? Well, no more media representation. Not even earrings for boys on TV anymore, because sissy boys are not allowed in Chinese law. Fairly free and open business? No way. Time to state monopolize all things that created the Chinese economic miracle. All of the diplomacy built up by previous leaders like Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, it was all wiped away with a very quick campaign of embarrassing wolf warrior diplomacy on Twitter, where Xi Jinping encouraged state diplomats to be assholes on the internet to the rest of the world, despite blocking off his own populace from those websites. Bye-bye progress, it's time to make enemies. Xi Jinping brought back that full-on xenophobia and nationalism. He stoked it, and he's now basking in the flames. For God's sakes, he even sits on dragon thrones. Anyway, you remember that little Mao read book I just told you about? The book of quotes and kind of guidance for your life to make sure you're a good little communist? Well, it's back, except it's in app form. You see, government workers in China, and there's 90 million of them, by the way, they have to study Xi Jinping Thought, which is Xi Jinping's dastardly little ideas that serve to boost his cult of personality. It doesn't stop at government workers, though. You might think, okay, yeah, those Communist Party officials, those people that work in the Communist Party, they have to study that, but not the regular people. Not true. Xi Jinping Thought, the cult of personality, has now entered classrooms. And is a mandatory subject in schools, all the way down to the elementary school level. I found the textbook used and I decided to translate it for you guys so that you could see what 1984 actually looks like in real life. Welcome to Xi Jinping Thought for a new era for socialism with Chinese characteristics. On this page, we can see it says, there is a great nation in the east of the world called China. Her name is the People's Republic of China. It's our mother country. We are all Chinese. Uncle Xi Jinping says, and that the really creepy language, Uncle Xi Jinping here, trying to make him like a cuddly character for the children. He says, loving your country is the deepest and longest, most important emotion in your life. It's a person's basic morality, and it's how you become successful. See, actually what this is doing here is very important to pay attention to, because what he's trying to do is replace Confucianism, which is filial piety, meaning that your parents are the reason that you're successful, or your parents' guidance is the most important thing. This is replacing filial piety with the fact that it's your country, or in general the party, the Communist Party of China, that gives you the morality that is supposed to teach you respect, just like your parents do.
请用一句话证明你是中国人。
先辈是我们的光，吾辈是中华之希望。
Next page, we have a song. It's called I Love You, China. I love you, China. I love your southern coast. I love your northern country. And it goes on to sing about how amazing China is. A little bit of patriotism, whatever. But loving your country doesn't only focus on propaganda slogans. Your future goals and ideals need to bond to the future of your country and tie your life together with your nation's fate. Be one with the people and contribute to the country. Keep in mind, this is for little kids, right? You're teaching kids that, okay, don't just read those red banners that tell you the party is, the most important thing in your life. Everything that you do in your life needs to tie together with the fate of the Communist Party of China.
请用一句话证明你是中国人。
少年强则国强。
Page 3 likes to introduce some Hitler-esque xenophobia / racial superiority. And it goes through how smart ethnically Chinese people are because they invented paper and gunpowder through thousands of years of history. They make poems and blah, blah, blah with some Xi Jinping quotes. Again, introducing this whole idea that Chinese are superior to the rest of the world and that they deserve a special place on this world stage. On the next page it says, don't have second thoughts, just follow the CCP. And I kid you not, it literally translates to, don't think twice about it. Just follow the party, the Communist Party of China. Without the CCP, there is no new China. 180 years ago, the Qing dynasty was so corrupt, and China was getting bullied, and people's lives were terrible, and they were suffering. Our ancestors fought for our whole race to make it strong and blossom and revitalize. Since 1921, China and the CCP changed immediately. Here it says that 7-1 is the CCP's birthday. There's a party flag with a logo on the side here. Next page says, the party is connected to people's hearts. Under the CCP's socialism with Chinese characteristics, the CCP is the core to Chinese leadership. The principle and mission is to give Chinese people happiness and to rebuild the whole Chinese race. There's a little quote from a kid. It says, my mom and dad say the CCP represents the people's basic fundamental interests. The CCP always stands on the people's side. Can you imagine walking up to a kid and you're like, hey, kid, nice to meet you. Tell me something about yourself. And he's like, well, the CCP stands for the people's fundamental interests. Nerd. Give him a swirly. Steals lunch money. Anyway, it's laughable that the CCP stands on people's side when it in fact is very much at odds with people and uses them as fodder for political gain.
想用一句话证明你是中国人。
犯我中华者，虽远必诛。
Next page, we have a little boy who says, let's learn about the great CCP member stories. Stories about how CCP members sacrificed everything for the country. Serve the people. That's a quote from Mao Zedong. Another bit of irony there because the Communist Party of China, actually, when they were fighting the Civil War against the Nationalist Party of China, they allowed the Nationalist Party of China to basically serve as cannon fodder for the Japanese, who completely decimated them and demoralized them and made them weak enough to where the CCP could actually hide out and wait for a power vacuum so that they could spring. In fact, Chairman Mao, the head of the Communist Party of China, sacrificed his own communists. There were people that were starting their own communist factions trying to spread his word, but they weren't fully under his control, so he had them killed. Chairman Mao was an absolute coward, a very smart one at that.
请用一句话证明你是中国人。
愿与吾辈之青春，捍卫盛世之中华。
Next page, it says, Xi Jinping always thinks about the people. He always goes to people and he cares about how they live, and he goes and visits minorities' homes, no matter rain or shine. You can always see him. Examples, and it shows some examples. It says, Xi Jinping went to Hohhot in Inner Mongolia to an orphanage to encourage a deaf girl to study hard. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you would, maybe as a Westerner, or maybe you're in another country, but you understand, you're speaking my language right now, we can understand English. You would probably look at this and say, how does anyone fall for this stuff? But that's how tone deaf, no pun intended, the Chinese government is. Another example is 2018, Xi Jinping, during heavy rain, went to Yantai port to check on the marine engineering equipment construction site to shake hands with the laborers. Do you not get Kim Jong-un vibes or Kim Jong-il vibes or Kim Il-sung vibes? Very North Korea-esque, right? Going to a site to shake hands and say, you're doing a great job for the mother nation, right? Very funny too, there's this idea in China that like if you went in the rain, it's so hard, and our poor leader got all wet and almost caught a cold in that freezing cold rain to go visit that construction site. And that's expected, like if you ask someone like me, I would say, why is that an issue? Everyone walks through the rain every day. But in China, your dear, pampered leader, I can't believe he would go out in that storm. I can't believe he would dare get his hair wet. It's amazing. It's such a sacrifice. In 2019, he went to a Beijing hutong, which is kind of like the ghetto old areas, to check on the people. In 2019, he went to Chongqing, to the Tujia minority poor village, to check on the people. In 2019, he went to the Gansu relocation village to check on the people. You see all this kind of like poverty porn. Look at how Chairman Xi is so good at visiting the poor people and how he makes sure they're doing fine. In 2020, he went to the Yunnan minority village to make local cuisine with the Dong people. And you see what this is? This is actually all a build-up for Xi Jinping's like poverty alleviation campaign. He goes and they show him at all these scenes, like, oh, he's here looking at the people. He's like, oh, they're poor. Oh, I'm gonna go here. Oh, look, they're poor. He's checking on all of them because later on he would actually declare that the war on poverty was over and that there was no more poverty in China. And I kid you not, that was actually a thing and a celebration that China had. They now claim, kind of like there is no COVID, there is now no poverty. There's no poor people in China. When in fact, that is simply not the case. There's a quote here. It says, "What do I care about most is the people who are suffering. How are they eating? How are they living? Can they have a good New Year? Can they have a good Spring Festival?" And that was a quote from Xi Jinping himself. It's just nauseating to read this stuff. Xi Jinping says, "If I disappoint my people, I won't exist anymore." The CCP party members never forget where they came from, and they need to serve the people. To always remember their mission, and to breathe the same air with the people and face the same fate, and to connect with their hearts. All of our hard work serves the people, says the guy who hides out during the pandemic and is absolutely nowhere to be seen until later when he pops up on his dragon throne. The CCP army for our good life, our happy life, it's the most important key to protecting our country. It's the Iron Great Wall. This kind of language is not the kind of stuff you heard back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. This is the kind of fierce language under Xi Jinping's leadership. And remember, this is for little kids. They serve the country and people. They are the guards to serve the people and countries and people's interests. Here's another Xi Jinping quote here. "Our army throughout history has fought with spirit. Back then, we didn't have many weapons, but we had our spirit and bravery. And now we have enough weapons, and our spirit and bravery has more, and our backbone should be harder."
此生不悔入华夏，来世还做中国人。非常棒。
On the next page, it says, "We are the CCP's successors. The first time you wear your little red handkerchief and you sing the Chinese Youth Pioneer Team song, every kid will feel so proud and honored. Do you remember when you became a young pioneer? Let's listen to Xi Jinping and his becoming a young pioneer story." Pioneer.
请用一句话证明你是中国人。
如果心眼有颜色，那一定是周国红。
Next page is Uncle Xi Jinping's expectation of us. "We are the future and hope of our country. Our healthy growth is the whole party and society's wish. As a party member and the top leader of the country, Xi Jinping always cares about us. He's hoping and expecting to work hard and grow up to become successors that build socialist societies." The kid says, "Xi Jinping is very busy, but no matter how busy he is, he still joins our events and cares about our growth." Sorry. Xi Jinping walks into school to come see us, hoping we can become better people and learn knowledge and build our body and solidify our base, so one day we will become successful. This kid says, "Do you remember the main values of socialism? Let me quiz you." That's a kid's dream, isn't it? Pop quiz, what are the core values of socialism in Xi Jinping thought? This is the last page I'll translate. "I need not only to clean my own garbage, but also society's garbage." Well, they should probably first, put separate bags in the recycling container so they don't all go in the same place. Anyway, I need to love doing chores. I need to learn knowledge so I can make myself become a useful person for the country. We need to love the CCP, we need to love our country, and we need to love our people. We need to study hard, become moral, smart, and healthy, and well-rounded in this new era. We need to contribute our strength to build the country. I'll just cap this off by telling you guys, this is shocking. Communist ideology and communist principles and all that kind of stuff has always existed in China. The problem is that it's rampant now, and it's surrounded by the spirit and image of one man. When I was in China before Xi Jinping took over, it was a very different place. It was kind of like Chinese people wanted to be on this world stage with everyone else, participating on the same world stage. It's just become a very, very toxic and poisonous place. And it's not the fault of the people, because look at what they're forced to study. This is a new era of how to re-brainwash people in the style of Chairman Mao. And this is becoming very, very scary for the future of China, because how do you kind of de-escalate this situation when people in America are studying about science and math and technology and reading and all this kind of stuff, and people in China are learning about how to give their blood, heart, and soul to the party, and how the party's principles are the only thing that they should focus on, and how Xi Jinping is their leader and role model for every action that they have in life. You understand how that doesn't add up. And I see some very, very dark days coming for China unless something happens, which I don't know if it ever will. Because of the amount of pressure that I get from the Chinese government, my videos do get mass flagged from people, and it does lead to demonetization. In fact, the last video I just put out was demonetized completely, so there was no money earned. Not saying I need to earn money from these videos, but I do appreciate the people that support my work on patreon.com/Laowinner86. In fact, I'm gonna put up the rest of the translations of all of the books and pages that I did that didn't make this cut. They'll be up there, so there's something for you to look at. If you do want to go support my work, there's supplemental material from this video, and I do that actually quite often. So if you do want to see extra stuff and you want to support what I do and actually help fight the oppression and the censorship that we have to deal with when we talk about the Chinese government, go over there and help out. I appreciate it.